Welcome to the Confidence Through Health podcast. This is your host, Jerry Snyder. In this episode, I have a conversation with Greg Presto, who is a fitness journalist and video host. And he has worked for years covering health and fitness and sports. And, he has created a book called The Workout Bucket List. And basically what he has done is made exercise fun again. And so he details in this book different things that he has done that are like borderline crazy in some instances, of like scaling the Mayan ruins, ice skating a 4.5 mile trail through Vermont, training like a Baywatch lifeguard. We talk about some of the things he has done, and some of the things he's tried to do and not been able to finish. And it's all in a way to make exercise fun again. It doesn't have to be the doldrums of going to the gym or going on a run or staying on a treadmill or swimming laps in a pool just to try and stay physically active and physically fit. You can include any kind of exercise. And we talk about, things from imitating or recreating, I should say, things from movies like Rocky movies, and as far as exercise routines and regimens, and even going back to historical things that people were doing way in the past to see if it can be replicated now. And so I found that to be fascinating, because one of the things that I try and preach is that exercise can be fun, and exercise doesn't have to be, this huge weight on your shoulders that I have to do this and it's not going to be fun, and it's going to be boring, and it's going to be painful. There's a lot of other ways to work in your physical activity for your health, but also for excitement and fun. And we talk about all those things. It's a great conversation. All right. So welcome, Greg, to the Confidence Through Health podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to talk to your audience and come up with some fun ways that they can really enjoy exercise. So I'm stoked to be on. Thank you.
Well, and that's why I want you on, is to talk about, because when I heard about you and like the things that you're doing with your workout bucket list, it was like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to this guy, because like, now I'm a runner and I enjoy running, but I know that's not for everybody. And like a lot of people think that we have to be stuck into one silo or one end. So how did you like become this, or get this idea of like, let me start trying these other things exercise wise and workout wise that maybe are off the grid, if you will?
One of the ways that I really got started with it was it's something that's made me excited about exercise over the years to do it this way. And the way it sort of got started was I was a young fitness editor at menshealth.com. This is 15 years ago. And I was filming a video series called the Men's Health Minute, which was every day, 60, check back tomorrow for more useful stuff in 60 seconds is what we used to say. And so we went out to film 2 workouts one day. And one of them was that DeBrickashaw Ferguson, who was then an NFL prospect who went on to play for the Jets and some other teams. Yeah. And he would push a Cadillac Escalade around a parking lot to help him prepare for the NFL draft and for the combine. And so we went out and did it just with somebody's small SUV, and it was a blast. Yeah. And that same day, I had talked to a coach about some ways that people could do jump rope tricks like you see in a Rocky movie. Specifically, we were like recreating the jump rope montage from Rocky IV.
Nice.
And we finished filming those videos, and you just could not tear the smile off my face. And I was already, interested in exercise for many years. I'd been writing about it and was talking to people about it, but I was like, this is the way it should always feel. Right. And so I started gathering and reporting on things like this, and have just kind of become a collector of this stuff along the way. So that's sort of a long-winded reason that I came up with it. And the second one is I really like spreading fitness in this way, because I think one of the defining things that makes us human is that we're storytellers. Whether we're telling a story to ourselves, whether we're telling it to others, that's how things become compelling. And I mean, it's kind of convenient for me to think that because I'm a storyteller for my job, but
Sure.
like you said, running a marathon or I go to the gym 3 times a week and I do the same machines is a compelling story sometimes, and for some people, because it's helping them maintain muscle mass, they're getting to do things they want to do. All those things can be a super compelling story. But if you can get all those benefits and be building another story for yourself, whether you tell anybody or not, I think it's even more compelling.
Right. Well, and it's cool, I think, in what you've done with the bucket list, the workout bucket list, is to be able to see, like, maybe like you said with the Rocky IV montage, like see something and go like, now granted that was, acting. And so there was obviously some movie stuff put into that, but like to see that and go, what if we tried that? And like, so what are some of the things that you've done that have been like, and whether they were your inspiration or, somebody else suggesting like, hey, you should try this. Like, what are some of the things that you've done that are like sort of out there that most people wouldn't think of as exercise, but you saw as, I'm getting a workout by doing this?
Sometimes it's as simple as, like you're saying, movie stuff, going to a place where there's a movie scene that you heard about and trying something there. Like, for instance, I live in Washington, D.C. And here in D.C., they filmed at the end of the movie, The Exorcist. There is a scene where the priest falls down this huge set of stairs. And that set of stairs is in Georgetown. So it's like 30 blocks from my house. Okay. And it is famously an incredibly steep staircase. Yeah. So that is, like, for many years been a place that people went to do stair workouts, and it's super intense. I know the American University track team uses it sometimes, but it's such a fun thing to be like, I'm going to go to the Exorcist steps today. And the same thing happens with also here in DC, turning a run into like a way to experience history. And that can be as simple as, I spoke with, you remember this too, when Bill Clinton would run in the streets, it was like a news event.
Right.
And so I talked to one of his Secret Service agents from that time and was like, what were the routes you were run and how did you come up with them? Yeah. So he told me about them. I put them in the book, but also it's just a fun way to go for a run that's totally different. It's like you're experiencing the run part, but you're also experiencing this fun. So for me, that's one that I love to do. Anything involving a location like that. Mm-hmm. I think of them as monumental workouts. Right. Going to a location and just coming up with something to do there, or doing a challenge that you learned from someone while in a location like that, just adds something new to the experience.
Right. And that piece of it is, it's like, I know as a runner, I know runners run, and a lot of times we run to get the runner's high, right? We're like, and if we go for a run and we're like, I should have felt it and I didn't, it's like, it could be a little depressing. Like, what did I do wrong? And so it's like the next day, it's like, I got to get the runner's high. I got to get it. Like we're chasing that fix. But it sounds like
I'm jealous because literally I've run so much over the years, and I don't think I've ever experienced a runner's high. So I'm very jealous.
Yeah. I actually got it. I had it this morning on my run this morning. And it's just one of those things that it's just like, okay, now I feel like I can go forever. But it's a connection, it's a connection with how you are in the run and how you are physically. But it sounds like you're finding that in your workouts. Like you said, like I could just imagine you're running that route that the president ran, and you're just like, you're a part of history. Like, that's a cool connection.
Yeah. I like that. And I like to run those kind of historical routes, and also even just coming up with something that turns, and I know we're talking about running a lot, but it just turns a run into something that's a little extra. So, whether it's I don't know if you've ever seen people doing the thing where they pick up trash while they run. That's really fun. It's actually really fun to do. And it turns it into interval work. Right. But also here in DC, I do a thing sometimes where I'm like, I'm going to run to 14 statues today. I'm going to keep running until I go to 14, and I take pictures of them as I hit them. And then I go home and I read about them. And I'm like, I didn't even know who this person was. I've gone past this statue 100 times. Burke. There's one of a guy named Burke. Yeah. Who's Burke? I go home and I go home from this run and I'm like, the statues I saw were Thomas Jefferson, this person, and Burke. Who's Burke? And then I Google it and I get to find out something new, which for me is so fun.
Yeah.
The same as like doing a workout, if it's not at running, if it's something you're doing at home, when you're doing a workout that's from someone that you respect or admire, whether there's somebody that's alive now or somebody that was alive a long time ago, here's what this person went through. And even just for a second, you get to kind of like know what it's like to be that person. Just like if you were to eat a meal that was from a cookbook from the 1800s, this is like doing that cookbook with your body. So for me, I like you said, it's just another way to engage your mind, and you're still getting all of those great benefits that you get from a regular workout.
Right. Well, and it several years ago, this week, actually, several years ago, I was the strength and conditioning coach for a high school football team. And it was a homeschool team. And we went to Florida for a national tournament. And the coach was like, okay, we got a game on Thursday and a game on Saturday. We got to do something on Friday to loosen everybody up and everything. And we're right at the beach, Panama City Beach. And so we go out to the beach and I like create this workout on the beach, and we're in the water. Like it's, cold, it's November, but I've got them in the water doing like high knees and like doing, crunches, as the wave comes in, they're underwater, they're doing push-ups into the water, all this stuff. And of course it was a tough workout. It was, but to this day, I mean, this was 5-6 years ago. Whenever I run into one of those guys, they're like, hey, you remember that beach workout? And that's the type of thing that I think that you're getting at with this bucket list is like, the workout doesn't have to just be a routine piece of your day. That's just like, oh, I have to get this in.
Absolutely. I think
it can be something.
It takes it
crazy.
from have to get to, for sure.
Yeah.
And that to me is so huge. And I love the example you give there, because the way I often compare it is I think of just when you were a kid at a sports practice and a coach would have that day where he says, okay, enough drills. We're going to scrimmage, or we're going to play a game, or we're going to do something like this that's a little contest.
Right.
And you go from slogging through drills, which are needed, for those kids, but you go from slogging through those drills to being excited, being enthusiastic about playing whatever that game is. And that, I don't think that feeling goes away just because we're adults. I think that's one of the things that made CrossFit so popular was here's this competition, this variety aspect that's different. These types of workout challenges, they give you that opportunity to play.
Right.
I know a great coach who says you have to get people to work out, but you have to stop them from playing.
Oh, that's true.
So that's one thing that I always remember. And it's not just for people that are like total amateurs like me. Just last week I was interviewing Sheamus, who is a 2-time WWE champion. Yeah. And he told me completely unprompted, I didn't mention anything about this, that a few years back he had started to get bored with his training. Yeah. But like he started incorporating weekly challenges for himself that were different. So he was doing his base training, but then he would do some kind of weekly challenge that was different than what he'd been doing. And he really was able to fall back in love with the gym. Right. And I think and I'm sure it's true with the folks you coach. I hear it from people that I talk to, and I hear it from coaches that I work with. Like, if you're not a professional athlete who needs to be on a very specific training program to reach your goals, like why not have a little variety in there that tickles you in a different way? Yep. Like, sorry, I was going to say, even if you are one of those pro athletes, like there's room for this kind of stuff, like the thing with the WWE or one of my favorites. So I grew up a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. James Harrison, the former linebacker, he used to do a medicine ball volleyball game where they throw the medicine ball to mix up his conditioning days. Like he and some teammates would do that. And what's really fun about that, and this is like you go home and you Google it for me. I found out that game was invented for President Herbert Hoover. Oh, wow. So it's like totally, he didn't want to, his doctors wanted him to exercise. He didn't want to. So they invented this medicine ball volleyball game, and they used to play it on the White House lawn. And then 50 something years later, James Harrison's playing it with his teammates. And I think it's so much fun that way. Yeah. Well, and you mentioned medicine ball, and that's one of the things that like
because when I have clients that I'm working with for strength and conditioning, it's I just meet them in a park. Like we don't go to the gym. It's not, and it's like if you can't lift your body and do stuff with your body with a 10-pound medicine ball thrown in there, it's like, then you don't really need to be in the gym lifting a heavy weight yet. You need to get your body strong as a core and all that kind of stuff, to prevent injuries and all that. And like I will take a kid, or even I've got one that's a 28-year-old professional basketball player, and my 10-pound med ball in an hour later, and he's like, dude, that's the hardest workout I've ever had. And we're just at a park and just doing different things that, like you said, we're just throwing the ball around in different ways. Using some of the playground equipment. I have this one that I love that, when you're a kid, like you love to run up the slide, right?
Sure.
The slide's supposed to bring you down. Everybody knows that, but it's like, ooh, I can run up the slide. Oh my gosh. Like, your anti-gravity or whatever. Well, try and do that at 180 pounds. It's a little different.
Yeah.
And when it's 85 or 90 degrees outside and you're sweating, and I tell you, run up it, slide down, and do that 10 times. And when you slide down, now it's wet because you're sweating.
Now it's slick.
It's nice and slick and it's hard. And that's one of my favorite things to have people do, because they immediately will think back to their childhood age. But then they go, why could I do this when I was 5 and I'm 18 and I can't do this?
I think that's perfect. And you know what? I'm definitely going to try that the next time I see one of those steeper slides. Because you remember, way back when they were that metal slide that would burn your legs. Those are the ones I'm going to look for. And when I see one, I'm definitely going to try this.
Yep.
And I think that it gets down to exactly what you're saying there is like when you, whether you're seeing it in a movie or you saw when you were a kid, you're always like, I wonder if I can do that. Or I've always wanted to do that. And to me, that's like, bam, the inertia is gone. Right. The inertia is gone, and you're doing something you wouldn't normally do. You're challenging yourself in a new way. And even pro athletes look at those kind of things and they finish and they're like, man, that was way harder than I expected.
Right. Yep. So, some of the things that you've done, like when you look at things, do you look at things and go like, I need to pick a couple of things this year that are like just outside the norm? Or like, how does your inspiration come when you're looking at like your bucket list and creating what you want to do?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I want to have bigger, I'm lucky enough to have the time and things like that to be able to say, I want to have a bigger one that I'm going after. Mm-hmm. And then I want to mix in these smaller ones as I go, just to try them out. Whether it's to try them out or try to get better at them. So, and it doesn't always work. So, one big example I can give you of a big one that didn't work was, this past year. So Washington, D.C., where I live, is shaped like a diamond, or it was originally. It was shaped like a diamond until the western portion was given back to Virginia. Anyway, there's an ultra marathon runner here in the DC area, and his name is Michael Wardian. And he does all kinds of really cool challenges. Like I think he set the record for running across the US this year. And he ran around the outside of that diamond. Mm-hmm. So around there are these little things called boundary stones, which are these little, they're almost like the size of a gravestone, but they mark what the original land of DC was. And they are technically the first federal monuments. And so I decided to try running to all of them and in one day, and it's 60 miles. Oh, God. So I thought this will be awesome. I'll make a film about it. I trained, I hired a small crew. I had this whole plan. And between trying to film, kind of slowing down as the day went on, getting lost a couple of times, I just ran out of daylight with like a half marathon to go. And I was going to have to like trespass on federal land to finish. And I was like, this is not worth getting arrested over. But it was really fun. And it was disappointing not to finish that day. So sometimes you fail, whatever. But, that's just part of the deal when you're trying out these big things. As you try out like a big goal and you don't always make it, which is fine, and with the shorter stuff too. I I fail a ton too. Just because I either don't have the mobility or flexibility to do a certain exercises, or I don't have the endurance that the person that's inspiring me does. And that's like half the fun almost for me is like, I might look at an amazing person or read about someone's training and see like, let me try this out. And, maybe it's a Cirque du Soleil performer and I try to do her ab workout and I cannot finish it. Or it's a pro athlete, or even like one of my favorites that I tried out was I read this article about chess masters and the physical preparation they have to do.
Oh, yeah.
And so because sitting and concentrating that hard, they burn hundreds of calories and they like fries their nervous system. So they like work on endurance. So they do a lot of running. And then one of them that I talked to, I think now he's the coach at the University of Missouri for their chess team. And he told me what he did when he was preparing for this one huge tournament. He's like, I would do this. And it was just normal calisthenics, but it was for time. And he told me his time. And I was like, I'm going to try it. Let's see if I can be a chess master. And the answer is that day I could not. But what I love about that is like, and this is why I try to choose those things. I try to choose things that are going to be pretty hard because like that person was amazing to me. And now I'm even more amazed by what they can do. So for me, that's really fun.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, like, I think everybody would look at like an Olympic athlete, especially a medalist, and look at their workout and be like, oh my gosh, I can never do that. But to think about like a chess master and to be, I think most of us would not even think that they're doing anything exercise wise, unless we looked at them and went like, okay, they look pretty fit. They must be doing something.
Or they're just doing this,
right. Yeah. They're just moving their pieces around. But you're right. I mean, like that much concentration does, take a toll on you physically. And to be thinking that far ahead all the time, because they're
unbelievable.
So many steps ahead, they know what's going to happen. And so to be in that, it's surprising when you say that, but it's also not surprising because I can adjust my thinking and go like, oh, well, of course they have to be in that kind of shape to do that.
Yeah. And that was one that a similar one that I really loved was just like listening to, I was watching, so I'm a Jeopardy fan and I was watching Jeopardy and one of the now like super champions, his name's Buzzy Cohen. I think he hosts sometimes, he guest hosts sometimes now. He was on the Tournament of Champions and they were doing the, after the first round, they interview the contestants and he was telling Alex Trebek at that time that he had, between his regular appearances and then, been preparing in the gym to be on Jeopardy. And so I was like, I have to ask him about this. So I interview him and he told me that he was like, the first time I was on Jeopardy, there were things that I forgot because I was under so much physical stress.
Yeah.
And so he worked on being able to think on his feet while enduring things. And so he'd be in the gym and he would do a sled push or like a bent arm hang, like a chin up hold, or, planks, and have his trainer quiz him. Like, what's the capital of Bhutan and things like that. Wow. And see if he could still come up with the answers. Yeah. Because he said, you're on your feet when you're filming that show and you just start to get, and you're so frazzled. Yeah. It's like, you just can't access facts that And so I just thought that was so cool. And I was also like, this could be a really interesting way for somebody to, I asked him for his workout, so I have his workout in there, but it's just like an interesting way to think about any kind of thing you have to recall. So if you have like a big presentation coming up or something like that, doing it on the bike, like get on a bike and put yourself under some stress and then trying to remember it so that when you're under that same kind of physical duress, you might have this revelation that, okay, it went a little better than I hoped.
Yeah. Wow. I hadn't thought about doing that. It makes sense. Because that for most people, being in front of, whether it's a small presentation group at work or whatever, or speaking in front of a large group, like that's one of the most common fears is like speaking in public. Right.
Yeah.
But like, and a lot of people practice, you're sitting at your desk or, in reading whatever you're going to do, your presentation, whatever, you're rolling through it. But I hadn't thought of trying to do that while like on the bike or on the treadmill or something like that to add that little extra piece. But what's interesting is that like, so thinking of that, like, because I've written 2 books, and the first one I wrote came out of me very quickly, like 13 days, and it, like the first draft was done, and I was shocked because I never thought of myself as a writer by any stretch when I did it. But when I look back and people were like, "God, how did you do that?" And I said, "Well, basically, I took my phone on all my runs, and I run anywhere between 7 to 12 miles a day, and so I'm like, that's a long time to be out." And you're thinking, and it's like I kept thinking about like, oh, I want to put this in the book. And at first, I was like, oh, I'd forget by the time I got home because so many things in my head over that hour. And I get home and I'd be sitting there going, what did I think? What did I think? So I took my phone and I would talk to text as I'm running as it came out. And I was like, that's how it came out of me in 13 days, because I'd get home and I'd have like not just paragraphs, but pages of things that I was just talking to myself, as I was running. And it was like, and of course I'd have to tweak it all and make it make a little bit more sense. But because there is a flow state that you can get into, and if you're in that exercise mode and your physical body gets there, your mind will start connecting with that.
Absolutely.
I've experienced that.
I think everybody can think of a time they thought of a great idea while, doing some kind of workout. And the idea of writing a book that way it's funny. That's how Carl Sagan wrote his books.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He would walk around with a voice recorder and he would record them and then go back and have them transcribed. So yeah. It's a really inspiring and inspired way, especially as someone who does a lot of writing. I can tell you, it's a great way to start writing like you talk. And so this is total digression from training, but right. for any of your listeners out there who also want to write something down, whether maybe they're telling that story about what they're doing with their bodies, or just, they want to write some kind of story. That's a great way to tackle it so that you do write like you talk and don't get too caught up in the words. It's a great idea.
Yeah. So what, like, back to exercise, like in your bucket list, like what would you say is like when somebody hears that you did this, what's the one that people are like, are you serious? You did that? Like, that's crazy. Like
the one that recently people have been saying, oh, you did that, that's crazy, but I didn't actually finish it, is for the past number of months, I was training to dunk a basketball. So I'm not very tall.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm 5'10", I'm 40. Right. And a few months ago, I interviewed a guy in his late 30s about he ran his first 5-minute mile. Okay. And, that's not a world record or anything, but it was like it was a record in his world.
Sure.
And for me, that's like the point, that's really what matters.
Yeah.
And, you got to be going after something like that for yourself. It's so fun. And so I'm interviewing him. And during the course of the interview, he used the phrase, he said, I felt like the window was closing on that goal. Like he was running out of time to do it. And I don't really have any interest in running a 5-minute mile, but I do have always wanted to dunk a basketball. Yeah. So I got down to training for that. I hired a coach and I was working at that for a number of months. And like you said, what do people say? Wow, you're just talking to people and you're like, hey, there's this thing I'm doing. Yeah. And they're like, that's wild. Like, and I think it gets to a point that we were talking about before the episode started, which is like, you can choose anything as your goal. No one's going to stop you. Like, it's like you can. Now, you may not be able to accomplish it. Right now I'm putting a pause on the dunk thing because I wasn't able to do it right now and I want to do some other things, but you can pick anything as your goal. And so like when you tell somebody that you did one of these events or something like that, they might be like, wow, I never thought of that. And that's the fun of it. I mean, I mentioned this before and I saw this on your website, is that you ran one of the Krispy Kreme challenges, which I have before. And it's what did people say to you when you told them, hey, I ran this thing and I ate all these donuts? What did they say to you?
Well, I mean, the first one was, did you puke? That's usually a first one. But then it's like, I mean, why would you do that? That's the other question. Like, why would you do that? That just seems like it seems like it, and it does. It hurts. It cramps. You cramp and like you go through all that because you're trying to digest stuff at the same time. But you know, it's like it's foreign. It's like why would you do something like that? Because you're combining two things that really don't go together.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
It's really
but
fun. I've done one too. I did the one
yeah.
in North Carolina.
Mhm.
It's on the campus of NC State, and it really is fun. Like it's
Yeah.
like just it's at least the one that I did. It's a real zoo atmosphere, and
Oh
there
yeah.
people are wearing costumes, and
Yep.
it's just it's such a fun way to go do something totally different, just like you said,
Right.
totally
Yep.
foreign, very fun.
Yep.
Um, the one that I did recently that was really fun like that was just a few weeks ago. I climbed the Space Needle. They have a in Seattle. They have a
Oh
race up the
wow.
stairs,
Yeah.
um, which was really really fun and quick. Like it was over in 8 minutes, but like you finished and you were
Really?
like, "This is perfect." So what's funny is about it is that surprises everybody, and it's because it's on a hill. So
Oh,
it's
gotcha.
pretty tall, but it's on a hill, so it
Yeah.
looks taller than it is.
Gotcha.
But it was really fun, and I had talked to the reason that I got into it was I had talked to one of the top tower runners in the U.S. Which I didn't know was a sport, but everything's a
Yeah.
sport when you
Everything. Yeah.
Google it. And he told me, he was like, the Space Needle is maybe the most fun one in America because it's outside. He's like, when you're running around, you ring it. And so
Okay.
you're able to see out as you
Yeah.
go. And it was really fun. And like I said, over quick, like
Yeah.
9 minutes, 8 minutes. So that when you were done, you were like, I've really felt like I did something. I'm getting this awesome reward, this awesome view. But unlike a lot of these other things, sometimes they can be a bit of a slog,
Yeah.
and this one was it was fantastic. I loved it. I can't
So
recommend it enough.
so if it's so are you running like at the same time as other people, or is it
Yes.
like one at a
So
time?
they have it in
Because
waves like any
okay.
other kind of race.
Yeah.
The people in the elite wave finish in 3 minutes and change.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I think I would have been able to be a little faster, but you're trying to pass people and
Right.
things like that and not wanting to like run people over. Yeah, I mean, there are other people in there, but it's not so crowded. They space you out a little bit, and it's ship timing. So,
Right. Right.
so you don't have to be starting right at the starting gun.
Right. So what? Well, and maybe there are, maybe there aren't. I'm assuming there are some things that you've had to like. You've got the idea, and you're like, okay, now I got to get permissions from some people to like be able to do these things and like be a part of this, workout. Is there anything like that that you've tried?
Where I wasn't able to get involved, or where I'd have to
Where
like ask.
no, where you did, where you like hey, I want to do this, but I'm gonna have to ask like special permission from somebody to be able to recreate this or do this event.
For sure on the recreation. I mean, I was always, especially with putting things in a book, making sure that I had the person's permission to
Right.
include their workout in the book. One of my favorites. It's kind of different than what you're asking, but it kind of fits. Is I went to so I was watching the Ken Burns documentary on the Roosevelts.
Yeah.
And they're talking about when he was young, how Teddy Roosevelt was sickly, and then he worked out to become more virile and more hardy.
Yeah.
And they're showing a shot of his childhood home,
Mhm.
and on the desk there's this book, and they show this shot of this like old timey calisthenics book. And so Teddy Roosevelt's childhood home is run by a national park in New York. Like if you're in
Right.
Manhattan,
Right.
you can go.
Yeah.
And so the next time I was there for work, I went and I said, "Hey, can I look at this book?" I brought a screen grab of that I took on my phone, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Can I see this book and take a picture of it?"
Yeah.
And they were like, "Well, you can't touch anything." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not asking for me to touch it." I was like, "You
Right.
touch it." And so the conservator later that day went in and used like little forceps or whatever they use to
Right.
turn old pages, and he sent me pictures from inside.
Oh, wow.
So I could see what some of those exercises were, which was really funny. Because some of them were, it's like an 1800s childhood. He was born in the late 1800s. It's an 1800s childhood school fitness book. So it's
Right.
it's crazy stuff. It's like
Yeah.
lean forward and sing Yankee Doodle while making these arm motions. So it wasn't like
Nice.
the greatest workout of my life or anything, but it was
Right.
just kind of fun to do. And it
Yeah.
was cool to get that kind of permission from somebody to say like, okay,
Right.
cool, now I can learn this.
Yeah.
Another one that was really fun that I didn't get permission to use, but I did end up, I have all the info on it was,
Mhm.
I was just curious. I was like, what was the first workout that was ever in Flex magazine? I was like, let's
Oh
find out.
yeah. Yeah.
So I went to the Library of Congress and I just started flipping through. And it's really fun because those first issues, they were just like figuring out what Flex was about. And it was like a news magazine about bodybuilding. And then over time, it gets to be about training. But the first full workout that was in it was from a female. It was from a woman who had won the whatever Miss at that. I don't remember if it was Ms. or Mrs. Olympia at that time.
Right. Right.
And I was like, this is awesome. And it's just like a little card in there, maybe this, as big as an index card. And it had a whole like insane bodybuilding workout that's like 3 hours long because it's like 100 sets of like everything.
Oh, right.
But I tried to get in touch with her to get it in the book, but I wasn't able to get in touch with her to get it in there. But it was just kind of fun to be in there and be like, can I find this? Does this exist?
Yeah.
And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, and that's a neat part of if you're once you get into the exercise piece, I think for somebody who's just starting out and trying to get themselves exercising, that may not be, maybe it's more of the movie thing. Like I saw this in a movie, can I recreate it? But then as you get into it, like getting into that history piece and finding out like, okay, where did it come from? And like you were talking about, like with Roosevelt's, childhood exercising, I think we would all recognize like, okay, that's what it's going to look like. It's like there wasn't a lot of true training, if you will, going on because, they're working the farm or they're doing, there's a lot more just physical activity in their daily life. And they didn't have to go and train for their exercise as we do now because, we're in our cars and we're sitting at desks and things like that. So we've got to come up with these things. And a lot of times I think going back to like getting a garden if you can and like going for hikes in nature. You don't necessarily have to come up with these huge, crazy workouts or even go to the gym, just being able to just go like, okay, well, this is what people used to do a long time ago and they seem to be in shape. So let's just recreate that.
Yeah, and I think, as long as as long as it's helping you meet your goals and it's something you enjoy, I think that can be great. But even some of that old stuff is like legit training. Like there was a YMCA handbook that was like the original YMCA workout list that they would give to kids.
Oh, wow.
And like it's a lot of stuff you'd expect, like body weight squats and things like that. But there's a drill in there that I love, and I'll send it to you. It's called the toothpick drill, which is a kind of like unilateral Superman thing. So like, prone position, laying on your stomach. It's like lift the arms, then lift the legs, and you're supposed to do it to a certain rhythm. And I think the coach would whistle at the YMCA. And so it was creating these sort of like instability in the core and all right, now we're going to lift the right arm and the left leg and now we're going to lift them all together, and it was a sequence that they would do on whistles. And it's not any easier than it was 130 years ago. It's not the hardest thing you've ever done, but it's still kind of fun to be like, hey, this is what they were teaching kids then and we're still using some of that now. So some of that stuff can be really fun. And similarly, there's and I know I'm focusing a lot on the history stuff, but there was Babe Ruth had a trainer, and so it's really funny to read the interviews with him. He's like, everybody's like, Babe Ruth's fat, and they're like, he's fat, but he's very fit, and he works really hard to be as strong as he is at the size he is. And I mean, now we know a lot of things about mass moves mass and all of the things about like the reason Cecil Fielder hit 50 home runs in the 80s and nobody else did. But Babe Ruth's trainer, who what's his first name? His last name is McGovern. I keep thinking George McGovern, but that was a politician. But he wrote a book that includes like an ab workout. He was like the
Yeah.
first guy who was into core,
Oh,
and you
wow.
can, and it's like the same stuff that you're going to do a lot of the times in core work now, those
Yeah.
same kind of things. So it's pretty cool to see that older stuff and see, just like you said, some of it, it's like, who knows? But some of
Right.
it is really carried through for 100 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the body's the body. It's not like we've had this massive change in our structure. And so if it worked then, it should work now, from just like a basic workout standpoint. But yeah, it's for somebody who is, oh man, I don't want to just sit on my floor and do, you know, 5 minutes or 10 minutes worth of ab work. I'd
Mhm.
rather go find some other way to do it. That's what you, I think, provide through your workout bucket list, is like that opportunity to go find other things, or at least open the door to, like, if I'm not in Philadelphia, I can't go recreate Rocky's run through the streets, you
Mhm.
know, but can I find something locally that I can recreate?
Sure. Or make your own montage,
Right.
just like what are 5 things you could do? And I'm sure now that everybody knows how to make reels, you could
Right.
you could make your own kind of fun montage, do 5 exercises that you feel like you look strong doing. And then it's like I said before, then you're sharing that story with people. Like, hey, I did
Right.
this to make a montage. It was
Right.
fun.
Yep. And I think a big piece of doing a workout, exercising, is that connection piece. Because as humans, we are relational. We like to connect with people. That's part of who we are. And so whether it's, connecting with the history of the exercises or the workout, or it's connecting with other people, like you said, like putting a reel out and going like, hey, and even just putting it out going, hey, anybody else want to try this? Like, show me your stuff. Like, you become the person that's creating a workout going, I wonder if anybody else would be crazy enough to try this. That kind of
Absolutely.
thing.
And I think that that's the fun of, buddy workouts and partner workouts. At
Yeah.
the top, when I was talking about the pushing the car thing, the reason that I've kept doing that over the years with friends, is it's so much fun to do together. Like, you get
Yeah.
together with a friend and it's like, hey, do you want to go to lunch on Saturday? Before we go to lunch, do you want to push your car around a parking lot for an hour? And they're like, yeah, let's do that. And so we go and we do that and push it back and forth, switching off, listening to music,
Yeah.
or, any kind of I do one, you do one type of workout.
Right.
Those are real, it's like, all right. And, one of the ones that I ended up with in the book is from Nitro from the American Gladiators. And he told me he likes
Yeah.
to do the sort of like, I do one, you do one, which is like, I think he does like a snatch with each arm and then maybe a burpee or something like that. And then they do 100 rounds. But even if you're not doing that, even if you just like come up with your own, like
Yeah.
you and a friend, like, oh, I'm going to do an exercise I like. You pick one you like, I'll do it, then you do it. You're cheering each other on. You're
Right.
doing it together. Like that's such a great way to connect.
Yeah.
And just like you said, you start to get into those flow states where you're really having great vibes going between you and them too.
Right.
It's such a great way to connect.
Well, and like you said about, like, if we're not professional athletes, like those, they have a specific, I have to train this muscle group and this, that. But if we're not there, if we're just the average person at home who, like, I just want to exercise to keep my body fit, right? I just want to get healthier. It really doesn't matter if you're like, oh, today I have to focus on my biceps and my da da da. It's like, just go do a workout and get your heart pumping and have fun. And if you did too many arms one day, it's not going to be the worst thing in the world, if you're having fun and connecting. And I think that's a huge piece that you touched on.
And I think even if you are training for something, there's room for this, like you're saying.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
is like, okay, let's say I'm on a training program. Let's say I'm training for a marathon or
Mhm.
whatever it might be. And I know I need to get in these X workouts per week. And this is the way I like to use this a lot of times, is if I have a goal that I'm going towards, and I know I'm going to have 4 lifts a week or whatever it is
Mhm.
that I need to get in, but that 5th day, what am I going to do that 5th day?
Right.
And it's like, maybe on that 5th day, I'm going to do something that I saw somewhere that was a cool challenge that I want to try, or a challenge that I've tried before to see if I've improved,
Right.
or get together with somebody. I mean, even if it's the kind of thing where you're playing pickup basketball, like anything that sort of, even when you have a trading program you have to be on, there's room for this kind of stuff. That's
Right.
why I give that example like of Sheamus from the WWE or James Harrison is like, even those guys are finding that room
Right.
for that kind of little extra something, especially on the days when you feel that inertia where you're like, okay. And you're like, now it's like, here's something new. Here's something that brings your spirit back into it.
Right. Well, and I've done with my athletes and clients is like, to have that day where you maybe just go to the playground and play like a kid, because believe me, if you go to a playground that has a decent size equipment, playground equipment, not workout equipment, but playground equipment, if you go and you can find ways to do things on that will wear you out in 30 minutes, and you'll start thinking like, oh my gosh, as a kid, I thought I could stay out here for like 2 hours, and like can't handle 15 or 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And you start to realize the size difference, of course, it's a big factor in it, and the weight difference, of course. But it does bring you back. And it can be frustrating because then you're like, okay, now I have to come back again and I have to figure out how I can finish this. I got to be able to do this. And like, so I've had, besides just, your standard monkey bars and things like that, but like there's one park here that we've got it's a rope, but it's like a spider web rope.
Okay.
And it's probably about 6 feet tall. And, so it's got different rungs all the way through it. And like to climb over that thing and back, like is a massive challenge for an adult because your center of gravity is different.
Yeah.
And I love going out there when there's kids out there because I'll just point over and I'm like, hey, you see that kid doing that? And he's just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, just over. And I'm like,
I think any of your listeners who have ever been to a climbing gym know that feeling where you see these like 10-year-old kids and you're like shaking your fist at them because they're just flying up the wall.
Yep, exactly. But I'll just point them out and I'm like, we're going to do that. And they're like, no, I can't do that. But then they do. And that adds another, like that sense of accomplishment piece when you try something and complete it. Whether it's, a traditional workout or not, like just having the idea and completing it gives you that confidence in that boost of, of confidence that you're going to be able to do something else.
I think that too, one of the things that is really interesting about this kind of stuff, to get a little less fun and a little more technical about your well-being is we have hit on almost every single aspect of, there's an acronym in positive psychology called PERMA, which is like the different aspects of things that help your well-being. Right. Positive thoughts and emotions. It's flow, which is the E. It's relationships. It's meaning, which is something that you get to assign. And the A is accomplishment. So these kinds of workout experiences, it may seem like, oh, you're just messing around and things like that. But really, they're really good for your well-being because you hit all 5 of these things that are scientifically proven to help your well-being.
Yeah. And I think that's, from your brain standpoint, that's almost better than the physical benefit you get, to your body, is that benefit to your brain that like, you get the dopamine hit and the surges and all that, but then also the next time you come up against something that seems hard and you're like, okay, well, I did this thing, and so you've got some building blocks to go off of. It's like, okay, I can do the next hard thing.
Exactly. It's creating resilience. It's creating, people that love David Goggins like to talk about the piggy bank and things like that. So it's all of those things are being created. And also, just like you said, all that great brain chemistry, like you can, and to me, it's the bonus. It's the double. It's like you do get all the physical benefits and then you get all this bonus stuff. Like to me, that's the really great thing about taking this kind of attitude towards exercise. And it doesn't always, not everybody has time. It's like the one thing that I always say is like, if your life is jammed up, you shouldn't be browbeating yourself because you didn't, in addition to exercise, come up with a way to make it like a whole new adventure. But like, if you can figure out a way to mix it with something that already gives you some of those things, that's great. You know, if you, when you read about people that do either treadmill or cycle video gaming, you know, they'll do these kinds of things that are helping them cardiovascularly, but is already something that they do to put them in a flow state, which video games do for a lot of people, and also help them de-stress. Like, hey, on top of that, now we're adding in this zone 2 cardio. So you're getting all these like cool cardiovascular and metabolic benefits. Plus you're playing Super Mario and you really like that anyway. So it's like, even if you, and I never want to say, you know, when people are like, I don't have time, that's not an excuse for a lot of people. As you know, that is a real thing. Like people are in like, people already beating themselves up enough that they're like, I should get up at 4 a.m. and crush it with the dawn patrol. Like, not everybody has the psychological, physical, emotional energy right now to do that. That may not be the season of life that you're in. But if you want these kind of benefits and there's something you already like doing, it may be something you can tie in.
No, I definitely agree with that. And in today's world, I think being able to do that multitasking is huge. You know, and I know that there's more and more. I'm trying to think of the guy's name because I've seen several of his interviews. He's a doctor, and like every interview he does, he's walking on his treadmill, and he's talking. You know, and I'm like, because he's just like, you know what, I'm so busy, I don't have time to just go out for my 30-minute walk, and you know, and so I got a treadmill. It's one of those just manual treadmills, so it's going at his pace, and he's having to work a little bit harder, but it's quiet enough that he can do videos and interviews and things, and there's not a lot of noise going on. And so I think that type of like doubling them up definitely helps people in today's world with all the other challenges we've got, and we've got the technology to do it.
Yeah. And I think too, it helps with, you know, there's an idea of habit stacking, which that works with that. But I think it also works with a thing that I like to think about a lot, which is, you know, we talk a lot about compelling why, but I don't always think that that's, I mean, I think compelling why puts us in a lot of situations where we come up with something that we say is a compelling why, but it's not really compelling to us. I like to think more about, and this is sort of my whole concept here, is about a compelling how. How am I going to do the thing that gets me to the why? Because it's just like you said, if I feel like the compelling why is I need to run because I want X, Y, Z. If you don't like running, running's not a compelling how for you. But, you know, if you don't like going for those kinds of things, but like mixing these things together, that makes the how more compelling. Or finding a modality that you do enjoy, that's that compelling how. So for me, that's a huge part of why I like to spread this kind of gospel to people of like, you can have fun. The workout time is recreation time. If you don't play in the NFL, NBA, major leagues, or, you know, you're not a pro cyclist, like, workout time is recreation time. It is okay if you focus a big part of your mental energy around it about having fun.
Well, I think that is a big key. And I think people lose that when they think of, I have to do my workout. You know, and you know, because it's, you know, and not everybody thinks this way, but I know there's a segment of people that are like, oh, you know, when they were growing up, I have to go to PE. I have to do, like, they're going to force me to do these things that I don't want to do, you know, and so you associate it with that. But that's like what you're presenting is just the opposite of that. It's like, go find something you want to do and figure out a way to make it a little bit of exercise included.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely.
So this has been great, Greg, and I greatly appreciate you being on. So tell us, so your book, The Workout Bucket List, how can we get it? How can we get in touch with you?
The Workout Bucket List is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart.com, wherever books are sold. Maybe your local bookstore has it. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can always find me on social media. I'm on Instagram at like the magic word, because my last name is Presto. And my Twitter handle, I don't use Twitter that much, but you can always reach me there at Greg Presto. If you have ideas for a challenge that you want me to try, or you want to ask me for something that you can try, always reach out to me. And before we go, Jerry, what is one that you have that I can try? Do you have a challenge workout that you do sometimes, or a test that you try out that I can try?
Well, I mean, I could send you one of the things I do from one of the ab workouts I do. I actually got it. It was when I was running it in college. My roommate, who was a javelin thrower, had been given this workout, and it was developed by the professors at Stanford.
Oh, cool.
They were like, "This is," and if you there's it starts with level A, but then there's 9 other levels, I think maybe 12. But if you get to the last level and you do it right, like it does, well, I should say the last level, because the last level they're like go until failure, so that can take a while. But like level 7, level 8, where they actually still have the number of reps that you're supposed to do, if you do it right and you go through all the levels, like you literally are doing 5-minute abs a day.
Nice.
And that's it. And like, so when somebody is like, "Can you get a 6-pack in 5 minutes?" I'm like, well, technically, yeah, you can, if you can get to this point.
Nice.
Like, then because you're just maintenance, you know.
Nice.
But I'll send that to you because it's got a lot of like hanging V-ups and things like that are just, if you do them and you're doing them all just rapid fire after another, at the end of the workout, your abs are screaming at you.
Awesome. I can't wait to try it.
So yeah, I'll send that to you.
Awesome.
So cool. Well, yeah, and I'll link all your information in the show notes. So if somebody does have a question, or like has this crazy, like, "Hey, I want you to try this," like, I want you to be Forrest Gump or do something crazy like that, like I'll have them get in touch with you and be able to do that. So.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for the time.